How you doing, gang? It's your pal, number 8 in your scorecard, number 1 in your heart, Al Sugar Bear Barbieri. I'm coming again, way of Southern California. It's February 19th, and it's around 3:30 in the afternoon. It's a beautiful day here. I know you guys are in that horrific weather back east in Philly. I see it's going to be 1 degree tonight. It's a pleasant 72 here. It's a beautiful, I'm in a park. It's a beautiful, in Aliso Viejo, California, as you can see. Beautiful, beautiful park. Anyway, I figure you guys are bored with that weather, so I'll just share my Frank Sinatra story with you, and I'll tie it in with the Linda Evans, John Forsythe story. It's, anyway, pretty wild. So, I like to ask everybody a question. I mean, I'm a firm believer that the people we meet in life, our friends, our journeys through life, and what happens to us, the hand that we're dealt, for most of us, is sometimes there's a reason for it. And I have to start with, I grew up on the west side of Broad Street. I went to high school and grade school at Rosewood and Wolf. I lived with my mother and my brother. And after losing my mother in a tragic car accident on Memorial Day of 1977, I stood at Rosewood and Wolf for a couple of years by myself. My brother was at Villanova, living on campus. And, I'm 19, 20 years old, and my father had enough of flipping the bill over there at Rosewood and Wolf. He had a beautiful big apartment, and he said, pack up this shit, move to 19 Mifflin with me. He didn't want to pay no more bills over there. So I had to move to 19th to Mifflin, which, I'm a St. Monica kid, born and raised. My Rosewood and Wolf, at that time, this is 80-ish now, 79, late 79, 80-ish. I kind of liked Rosewood and Wolf, but 19 Mifflin was a nice neighborhood, and my father had a big duplex, so I moved in with him, and, me and my father bucked heads, and I must have turned down every city job, state job that he wanted to give me or get me. And one particular night, because I just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I came home from a casino real late at night, around 2:30 in the morning, I'm coming down Mifflin Street, and I see box spring and mattress up against my father's corner duplex on 19 Mifflin. I'm like, what, did somebody put trash up against the wall? So I got parked my car, and I come to the sidewalk, and then I realize it's my box spring and mattress with my clothes in boxes, and he locked the doors, he changed the locks, and he threw me out of the house. And, it was tough love, and I grew up right away, and I became a young man right away, and anyway, they don't make them like that anymore. I mean, at this time, in this day and age, some parents would get thrown in jail. But anyway, I happen to have a cousin who was going to Temple Law School and lived in a 3-story house with 3 students on the 700 block of Marshall between Fitzwater and Bainbridge. And that particular night, I slept in my car, by the way. I had a beautiful 1976 Toronado, plush seats. It was awesome. And that particular night, my father decided to throw me out. It was just as cold. It was the week of the Eagles going to play the Super Bowl. I'll never forget, I slept in my car. In the morning, I go over to my cousins, and make a long story short, they had a 3-story home, $400 a month. They had 4 bedrooms. There was 3 of them. They gave me a bedroom, and that's how I came familiar with living at 9th and Fitzwater. And that's how I became friendly with Ricky Baccare, Benny Marsella, and Danny Vanore. And this is how the Sinatra story goes, and it all ties in. So, at this time, it's 1982 or 83. I can't be sure, but I do know that for a fact because I lived in 9th and Fitzwater, an apartment right on the corner. And me, Benny, and Ricky this particular night were hanging out. And I recall, now Ricky has a different version, but I recall remembering Benny calling, again, this is no cell phone era, calling home. And this was late in the evening. This was like 11 o'clock at night, I want to say, or maybe 10, 11 o'clock at night, and he finds out that a woman by the name of Franny Casella. If I'm pronouncing her name wrong, I apologize. But Franny was an elderly woman at the time, and she was the president of the Sinatra fan club. And she left word to Benny that Frank Sinatra was going to be at Palumbo's. He's at Palumbo's, actually visiting Mr. Palumbo there. And word got around the neighborhood, and I remember being with Benny, and I remember somehow, some way, we got in touch with Ricky, because Ricky Baccare, as we all know, and Benny Marsella and Danny Vanore are three of the most talented singers in South Philly. But Benny and Ricky were Sinatra fans, and they're young kids. I mean, I got 4 or 5 years on them. And we go to Palumbo's, and time we get there, there is 3 deep on each side of kind of a red carpet kind of a thing where Sinatra's going to come out and people want to see him. And we get there, and like I said, it's 2, 3 deep on each side. And my objective for them, for Ricky and Benny, was to try to get to Sinatra and get an autograph for them. And that's what they wanted to get. And at the time, and if Ricky hears this, or Ricky can also post a picture that somebody actually took a picture of him in the crowd trying to get Sinatra's attention. It's a classic picture. I'm sure he'll post it if he sees this video. Anyway, I decide, so now there's Sinatra's car is at the end of this walkway where he's going to come out, and it's on the street now. I forget the name of the street, or whatever the street is, where the Rite Aid is, but that's the street there. And there's his car with another car in front, I guess the bodyguards and drivers, and it was a beautiful yellow New Yorker, gold Chrysler New Yorker. It was a gorgeous car. So I realized there's no way, being 2, 3 deep on each side of the aisle, where Frank's going to come out of Palumbo's, how am I going to get to him? So I decide to go around the car on the street where nobody was, because the line, the 2 lines, the 2 rows on each side was just about up to the car. I go around the car. Barbara Marx, Frank Sinatra's wife, is sitting in the car, and the car door is open on the street side. I open the car door, and as I lean in to say hello to her, right, big bodyguard, African-American guy, huge, just grabs me and tosses me. And what happens next is, like a nut, as they take off, I follow in my car. They were going through stop signs and red lights like they had official business, and I followed. And I followed them all the way to Valley Forge on the 76, to Valley Forge exit. And I'll never forget, there was 2 cars. And the time we got to the Valley Forge exit, the car that's behind the Chrysler, the guy gets out, same bodyguard, gets out on the ramp of the Valley Forge exit. He comes out, comes walking up to me on the ramp. I can't believe it. He stops. And he says, "All right, buddy, this is where it ends. Turn around." So obviously, I had to get off the exit, and that's the end of that. So now, fast forward, it's 1986, and I moved to Southern California. And as I'm there, I get a job at the Holiday Inn and the Roosevelt Hotel. Two awesome hotels. The Roosevelt Hotel is a legendary hotel in Hollywood, but I started to work at the Holiday Inn. My father begged me to get a job. To make him happy, I got a job, and I got a job at the front desk where I met, I can't tell you how many stories. But as I'm there, I actually landed a commercial, too, out of the front desk by accident. But while I was there, I decided, you know what, I'm in Hollywood. I'll just take a shot. Like the bartender in Rocky. You want me to take a shot? I'll take a shot. So I go get headshots, and I figure, I'm in Hollywood. I'll just dabble in this industry, and maybe something can come of it. Well, I registered with a talent agent, and there would be times where she would send me out on extra work. Now, if I had a day off from work, a couple of days, I wanted to do it, side money, I would do it. If it wasn't inconvenience to me, I would do it. And this one particular time I had had to show up on the set of Dynasty. And in 1986, Dynasty was still a hot show. And at the time, my father and comedian Guy Marks, no relation to Barbara Marx. Guy Marks, as some of you might know, was a comedian, and he was a working comedian, and he actually opened up for Frank Sinatra a couple times, from what I understand, and I believe he did. And he was friendly with Frank. But we'll hold that off for as we continue the story. So I told my father what was going on, and my father happened to tell Guy that I was being on the set of Dynasty, and Guy Marks calls me up, and he says, Al, when you get to this, if you can get to Linda Evans or John Forsythe, tell them you're friends with me, and tell them that I asked you to see if they can get me in touch, see if John Forsythe or Linda can get me in touch with a guy by the name of Benny Merlino. Benny Merlino was John Forsythe's double, double. He was his double. So I'm on the phone. I'll never forget. I lived at the hillside in La Brea, up in the hills of Hollywood, and they were shooting at the Formosa Studios. It was very close to my apartment. So, as you know, they keep the extras way away from stars, and we're cattle. But I hear some kids say he just saw Linda Evans and John Forsythe on stage 5 or something. So I sneak out, and I go to a certain stage, and I walk in these doors, and when I walk in, there's John Forsythe, Linda Evans, dressed to the max, suit, gown. They were just as gorgeous in person as they are on TV. And, you know, it was insane to see these two legendary TV stars. I walk in, and they look right at me. I said, hello. Again, John, Linda. I introduced myself. I said, I'm friends with Guy Marks, and Guy asked me to come if I can find you both. Is there any way you can get in touch with Benny Merlino for me? Linda, with the most pleasant tone, says to John Forsythe, or John says to Linda, John said to Linda, he looks at Linda, and John goes, Linda, I think they're on strike. So obviously Benny Merlino's union was on strike, and he wasn't showing up that day for work. And Linda looks at John and says, John, I think you're right. And she looks at me, she says, stands up, and she grabs me by the hand like I'm her little nephew. And she goes, let's go to the office and call him, Al. She's got me by the hand, taking me down this hallway to an office. I couldn't believe it. Linda Evans, this gorgeous movie star, television star. So we go to the office. She calls him at home. He gets on the phone, and the wind-up was Benny Merlino hooked me up to be in a main, they call it principal extra. Like there's extras, background, and there's extras where you can be right in a great scene, up close. In this particular scene, I happened to be in a nice scene with Joan Collins, and it was awesome. I was a bellman in this scene, and I never forget it. We're on the stage and sound stage, and they're doing a sound check, and the buzzer goes off. Quiet on the set, sound check, and I'm standing right next to Joan Collins, and she's got this turquoise leather dress on with turquoise high heels, and I turn to her with a whisper, and I go, Joan, you're looking awesome today. And she goes, oh, thank you, darling. And that was just an amazing thing, to just be taken by the hand by Linda Evans, and then standing right next to Joan Collins in the scene. I'm a bellman. It's unbelievable. So now, what happens is, Guy Marks also tells me that he's going to be in town, I forget, a week or two or a month down the road, and he was involved with Jack Klugman in a new sitcom called You and Me, or You and I forget what it was. And Guy told me when he comes out, he'll get in touch with me, he'll come get me, and I'll go with him, and I would love to see this taping of the pilot. And we do that. And that night, or after that pilot was taped, Guy Marks takes me to dinner with him, and we're going to an Italian restaurant in Westwood, and that's in the west side of Hollywood, near UCLA area. And I believe the restaurant was Martino's or Martin, that's something with an M. I believe it was Martino, I think, if I can recall right. And we walk in, and who does Guy see sitting in a booth? It's Frank Sinatra and his wife Barbara Marx. Well, as any, Sinatra fan, of Italian descent, you're going to meet an idol here, a legend, a living legend. Guy walks up to the table with me, and they're friends, and even introduces me. Say hello to my friend's son, Al Barbieri, from South Philly, and I address this the first time, Mr. Sinatra, nice to meet you, Mr. Sinatra. And Frank and Guy, they're talking shop, they're talking about business, where's Guy going to be, what's he doing, la la la, and I'm just listening and watching in awe. And at some point, I not interrupt. It was a time when I said to Frank, Frank, can I share a story with you? Guy Marks looked at me. He has no idea where I'm going with this, and because I don't believe I shared it with him. So I said, Frank, I think your wife would probably remember this story. And she looks at me with this amaze, and I start to explain to her the story of what happened at Palumbo's in 1983, when I explained to her, the guy opened up the door, and all of a sudden, she turns to her husband, Frank. She says, Frank, I remember this like it was yesterday. She startled the hell out of me. She looked at me, and she laughed. She goes, that was you? I said, yeah, that was me. I said, she laughed and chuckled, and Frank just like, really? And he was amazed. And I said, yeah. I said, I lived right around the corner from Palumbo's, and I had two friends are singers, and they were, they're big fans of yours, as I am, and we were trying to get an autograph. And after that, Guy said his goodbyes, and it was awesome. It's a shame, no picture to have this, to have a picture, but that's it. I mean, that was just this. It was just insane to meet him like that. And the Linda Evans, John Forsythe, they were awesome to me. Very pleasant. That was amazing too. So that was it. And so I shared with you the Sinatra and John Forsythe, Linda Evans. And I'll hit you up another day. There's plenty more crazy, just, insane stories, how I come in contact with celebrities and movie stars and whatever. So, all right, gang. It was a pleasure. Stay warm. Like I said, March is right around the corner, and you'll be out of that winter sooner or later. All right. Take care.